Joseph.
And I'm Nick.
This is Fish Jelly.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm great. I'm here.
Oh, okay.
How are you?
Okay.
Oh, yeah?
You've returned from your travels,
I have.
so that's good for you. And we will talk about your favorites and least favorites from the Cannes Film Festival on a YouTube video.
Uh-huh.
So we can save most of that talking for that.
Okay.
Is there anything outside of that you wanted to mention?
From Cannes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very busy. And my interaction with outsiders was limited. But I was just telling you, have a very nice conversation with the director Lucas Don't, who's president of the Queer Palm, because the one party I went to was for the presentation of that. And we had a nice conversation about film, about queer film at the festival.
And this director...
We reviewed his film Close. I think his first film, Girl, about a trans ballet dancer, won the Camera d'Or at Cannes, and of course, Close won the Grand Jury Prize.
Today's Memorial Day, which is
Yeah.
supposed to honor people who lost their lives while in service for the armed forces.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about, I went on Saturday to the cemetery to inquire about buying a plot for my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I've only been to a cemetery twice, I think, for my...
Your grandma's funeral.
So it was my grandma's funeral. I wasn't sure if it was my grandma or grandfather. I know I went to my grandfather's funeral in a church. He had the nicer, they bought their plots together,
Mm-hmm.
and he died after, my grandfather died after my grandmother. And this is all on my mom's side of the family. But I knew nothing about any of this. So what precipitated this is, for a few years, my mom always brings up, like, she's been talking about dying more, which, my mom is a very sort of like youthful, active 60-something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she's going to be with us for a long time. She doesn't have any health issues, knock on wood. I mean, that aren't in her head, but anyway, she's very healthy, but she brings it up. And I think more as a function of just trying to engage my sister and I, in something, like drag us into something.
Yes.
But I don't think it's not important to think about. So the last time my sister was visiting, we all had lunch and talked about it, and like kind of what my mom wanted. And so we thought, a good first step would be to actually like make an appointment with the cemetery and get information. But the first thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way is, so my mom had been talking about this, but then, it's kind of like a light conversation, and then we drop it because my mom doesn't, she's not in a condition or an age where it's like immediate. So we talk about it and then it just kind of falls off. But over Mother's Day, my mom and her sisters and brother went to the cemetery, the same cemetery, to visit their mother. And apparently, because they do go, they go like every holiday, they'll go. And it seemed my mom did not like her parents. And based on the story she told, I can see why. But so she doesn't really go to honor them as much as she enjoys being with her siblings. But apparently, my mom told me that every time they're there, like whenever they're sitting by the gravesite, and, they bring their lawn chairs and their, refreshments, and they'll just sit there for a couple of hours and talk shit, that salespeople, like cemetery salespeople, regularly approach people at the cemetery, like visiting their loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, my sister and I, we found that out. We just both thought it was so tacky that like you're just sitting there trying to have a moment, and you have some person trying to sell you like more plots or spaces. And
the business of death. Yes.
So that's what prompted my mom to be a little more aggressive about, like, let's talk about it. Let's go. So we go. And I have to say, so I've been to a cemetery for my grandmother's funeral and your grandmother's funeral.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Hmm.
And then I've only ever seen. Did your grandma have an open casket?
No,
Okay, so I
no.
didn't even see your grandmother.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I knew her before she died, but I didn't see her in the casket. My grandmother, it was an open casket, I believe. Probably shouldn't have been, because
I
she.
I don't think I met her. I met your grandfather.
Yeah, my grandma was pretty. Well, she died while we were together,
She did.
but you had never met her. But
Mhm.
she was bedridden for the last like 6 or 7 years of her life, so it wouldn't have been.
And your grandpa was not
And my
in his
grandfather,
right mind
when you
either.
met him, yeah, you met him once, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he was not. Like he just kept glaring at you, like, "Who the hell is this old moon demon looking man in my?" Well,
Well,
we were at a restaurant.
he did think that my brother-in-law had a little head, which he thought was funny.
Oh, my sister's husband.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, I guess I only have one brother. Yeah, but the so I I didn't have an. So a few thoughts. First, being at a cemetery was not cute.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't really like it.
But I mean, in the sense that, like, so we went on Saturday, Memorial Day weekend, probably not the best day to go. This cemetery, like, I don't have a lot of experience. It definitely is bigger than the one I went to for your grandma, but that was also.
Didn't we go to a cemetery in Riverside with your mom? It was right. It was right after I happened to. I think that's when I read the news that Abbas Kiarostami died. But I remember we were trying to look for some. We were trying to look for a cemetery somewhere.
We
We were in a
were.
car. Hmm.
Oh wow, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But this cemetery that my mom took me to, where her parents are buried and some other family members are buried, it's pretty big. Like, it's big enough that you can drive. Like, once you get in, you're driving around these like little roads to get to the different areas of the cemetery. Like if you had to walk on foot, it would be quite a bit of a
Hmm.
walk. So people drive, and they have roads big enough to fit. It's only one way, but cars can park on both sides, which is important to my story. But we so it was super busy. They have two chapels, so there were two funeral services happening. You know what it felt like when we got there? It felt like, I haven't been to Disneyland since 1996, but it felt like going to Disneyland.
An event.
It's an event because
Mm.
there was a procession in progress when we got there. So there were, like, the motorcycle. I guess they're cops. They didn't look like cops, but they had cop. There must be special bike cops
Insignia.
for
Mhm.
funerals, but. So there were all these cars there and all these people, and then the two chapels, it was like all these people waiting around, and then parking. You have to. There is a parking lot that maybe holds like 10 cars, but there were hundreds of cars there. So
Mhm.
they all just park along these little paths that go through the different parts of the cemetery.
Mhm.
So I end up parking, you know, kind of far away from the chapel, but it's the closest I could find a spot, not realizing that, they put those plots, like the actual grave sites, because they have other options to bury people, or put their remains. But the ones that are in the ground, they have those plots all the way to the damn street. So my car's long. So it was, my car was in front of, like parked right in front of three plots.
Mhm.
And it was so awkward because, like, when we got there was already a family there. So, like, literally they were like touching my car.
Mhm.
Like, if they moved their arm, you could see they're touching my car. And then we end up taking a tour, which I'll get to. But when we're going through the tour, I can see that now there are three families by my car. And it's just like, I don't know, that immediately when
Triggered.
well, of course I don't want to touch my car, scratching it, but it wasn't that. I mean, I wasn't being that selfish in the moment. I was thinking, like, gosh, if I went to go visit my loved one,
Or hated one.
but if I went there with the idea of, like, oh, I want to spend time with, my loved one, and but then, like, I have to do it, like, with a bunch of other people right next to me, and
Like
some
it,
assholes BMW parked right in front of me. I mean, I just
to interrupt your grief performance.
well, doesn't that seem like, I
It's
mean,
I think all of it's
oh, it
odd.
was
Yeah.
so odd. And then, so, okay, the way you feel about going to a car dealership to buy a car,
Oh yeah, I hate.
that's how I felt being there,
Oh
because I have a
yeah,
lot of experience buying cars, like, and it's always on, like,
it's like your day is in fucking purgatory.
I mean, it's easy for me because I have good or excellent credit and I know what I want. So the process of the car buying experience is very fast for me. It usually takes them longer to detail my car before they give it
Oh
to me.
no, it's not that. It's just like the song and dance and
Yes, that's
haggling and
so that's what it is. And that's what this lady was doing. And I don't know if it was the area, and I probably don't want to call out the actual cemetery, but and if I say where it is, I think people know which cemetery it is. But
this raggedy ass cemetery.
well, the other thing that made me uncomfortable is they're clearly catering towards a specific market,
What,
because this is what she
Latinos?
said. Yeah,
Uh-huh,
Latinos.
uh-huh.
And there were hundreds of people there, all Latino, all the salespeople. And I could tell by the way this lady was talking that they're kind of predatory. Like they prey on, like probably like like the patriarchs of the family.
Uh-huh. Were
And
there some layaway plans?
yeah, oh yeah, all kinds of plans. And then like my mom had sort of downplayed that she had kind of already had a plan for what she wanted to do. Although, to be fair to my mom, we had discussed, not unlike when I was a kid and we'd walk into the store, don't you ask for shit. We're not going to do this. So that's what
Mhm.
we did when we walked in there. I'm like, listen, I'm not signing anything. I'm not writing a check for anything, giving my credit card for anything. This is just exploratory information. That's it. And
Preliminary.
my mom was fully on board with that.
Mhm.
So we get there, and the way this lady, first of all, she says she's worked at this cemetery for 20 plus years.
Mhm.
And when I tell you, she seems so unfamiliar with everything I asked her. And it made me think that, oh, this is a real simple racket. Like you just prey on these, like this community that has, it's very cultural and I think also religious based, that
Mhm.
they have these feelings about being buried and what that should look like. And even if we can't afford it, like we're going to figure out a way, because,
Yeah, everybody
Dia
does.
Socorro has to be buried. And like, so the way she was talking to my mom was like, wow, you're just really like, I mean, this is just a sales opportunity for you. And I could see that she really wasn't accustomed to someone asking her like very pointed questions. And
Mhm.
she was getting very like, not my mother, the salesperson, was getting a little like I'm being inappropriate, because like this, they try to get them on this payment plan, because a lot of these people probably don't have $30,000 sitting around. So it's like,
Right.
oh well, it's interest free, you only pay this. And so my first question was like, let me ask you something. If we do this 5-year payment plan, if my mom dies tomorrow, what happens? Oh, and then it's all, and I am very comfortable talking about death, and I hate saying things like, oh, they passed on and they moved.
Mhm. Yeah, and all these fucking euphemisms. Yeah,
No, they
yeah.
died. She's dead.
Gone, not coming back. It's over.
Right. So I'm like, well, if my mom dies tomorrow, like, and I sign this payment plan today, what happens? And that lady was so ruffled. And then
Hmm.
I can't count the number of times she said, well, God forbid if anything happens to your life. And then they use all these terms to try to soften the idea of like, the bitch done died. We
Right.
buried her in the
God
ground.
actually didn't
We're,
forbid it. He
we're
doesn't
going to
forbid
cremate
anyone's
her
death.
ass and put her in a box. Like, that's what we're doing
You're right.
here. Like, you, with all these euphemisms, is like, can we just cut to the chase?
I just
So
want a slightly reinforced cardboard box.
So my first question was, okay, if we commit to this 5-year payment plan and she dies next year, what happens? Oh, and of course the long song and dance about how that's just so crass. And then she goes, oh, well, we give a $5,000 credit towards, which I
Towards
thought,
what?
towards the cost of like like whatever your plan that you're like whatever you owe, they'll give you $5,000 as like a death bonus. I don't know.
They just rub it off the bill.
Yes, and then I
Okay.
made a joke about like, oh, how it would benefit us for my mom to die within the 5 years then, because
Yeah.
and
You
that
save
lady
$5,000.
she did not like that. And then me asking very like pointed questions like, listen, what happens if like this lady is probably gonna drive me crazy for another 30 years. So what happens if like in 30 years when she dies, like I don't live in California, and my sister, who would also be concerned with her gravesite, doesn't live here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can I get a refund? Because I don't want to bury her here. And that lady did not want to answer that question.
Well, they must, because when push comes to shove and you don't utilize the space, must be something
Yeah,
when you
and I
sign.
pushed to the point where I just gave up. Like she just like ultimately said like, well, you know, I mean, it literally was like that. Like, well, and ultimately her best response was that what people usually do is sell their plots or give them to other family members.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to get on Craigslist and try to sell like, and I don't have family
Mhm.
to buy it. So, but yeah, I just found it like a really unsavory experience. And but that being said, I do think it's important because my biggest thought was because it wasn't so much the money. Like I don't think that paying for a funeral will be prohibitive when the time comes, even if I had to do it suddenly. I think the bigger issue is like I don't know what I would do. And at a time of grieving or stress or
I think a lot of those places depend on that too. You're acting, you're on a suddenly a time crunch, and you're despairing and in anguish, maybe.
oh, the sales lady said that.
Hmm.
She goes, "You don't want to end up in a situation where
We can really screw you.
that's what she said, that you'll ultimately be she said you'll be taken advantage of because you're going to have to pay full price for everything."
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah, I mean, that's real. And even if the money is not the issue, it's still like, with because I'm sure, like, let's say when my mom dies, she's probably going to be really old, which means that probably the last couple of years would have been a little stressful. And then, I can't imagine at that point that I'd be so stupid not to plan. But let's just say I didn't. The last thing I want to think about is like, okay, who do I call? Where do I go?
Hmm.
So that was what I was there for. And it was like fucking trying to squeeze water out of a paper bag from this lady
Hmm.
to finally get the information that I wanted. Because everything that we were paying for is like because my mom wants to be in a mausoleum. Because
Uh,
now this lady, then it's like this cemetery is now building this huge mausoleum.
hmm.
And so now the language apparently is shifting because then the lady kept saying, well, a lot of Latinos, when they, like when they see the hole in the ground and they see how deep it is, they start to have nightmares. And so then they think like they don't want to be buried in that deep.
Latino specific death
Yeah,
nightmares. Uh-huh.
yeah. And she's
Uh-huh.
saying this like, oh, you're going to scare my mom into buying the mausoleum.
Uh-huh.
So then she's like, now the new thing. And it's like the new thing. So for all of modern civilization, we've been throwing people's asses into the ground, but now we've decided that that's not
Is
cute.
the mass grave option possible?
It's just the way she was trying to explain all this was just so ineffective. Like, you don't understand your audience. Like, you're talking to someone who's clearly not that, like, death is not that precious to me. Like, I'm trying to be very matter of fact with you. And you're trying to, like, attack me with this flowery nonsense. But
Hmm.
the mausoleum is what my mom wanted to do.
Hmm.
And it's a beautiful space. But then I thought, um, because the lady's trying to describe it, and this woman, again, 20 plus years in the cemetery funeral home business, and sounded like it was her first day. Because I think she just is used to just running off the spiel,
Oh yeah. Hmm. And not
and
being
and
challenged.
anyone
Yeah.
asking any specific questions just threw her off. And then the way she's trying to describe the mausoleum before we get there was like, the way you're describing this, it sounds like you're just selling big safe deposit boxes. And
Well,
she goes, "Oh, well, that.
kind
Yeah,
of.
that's exactly what it's like." And it's like, oh my god, like this doesn't even. So then I'm gonna go in. Granted, a beautiful building, but it's like this doesn't feel like a. And so finally, in the end, I told the lady, "Listen, I can't imagine driving here to come visit my mom, whose body is in a wall over here. Like nothing about this feels intimate or like."
But again, should it? Should it feel intimate? I mean, how intimate do you want it to feel?
Well, that's why I mean, when I die, y'all can throw me in a shark tank. I don't give a damn. But I think it, if it were me, like if I'm still alive and someone I care about dies, I would want, I mean, I would just want their ashes and keep them with me
I prefer that.
because then they can be with me. And then when I feel like I want to have a moment with
I
them,
can put you in my coffee.
then, then that can be that. And I can have, I was thinking, what would I want my funeral to be like? And I think, like, again, it would throw me into a bunch of like a shark infested water.
And play Janet Jackson.
But if you don't want to do that, I think, wherever my home was, you could just have like a party and have my ashes there and
Mm-hmm.
just play Janet Jackson on a loop
Mm-hmm.
and then serve like my favorite food, like have like Mexican food catered with a bunch of desserts, and everyone can just like have a nice, like, I want the mood to be up. I want people just talk shit and like remember me and have a good time and serve box wine. And
God.
to me, that would be like, use the money for that. Like, and
Yeah.
then and then when I think like how much my grandparents spent to have their little plot, and it's like they were, on a fixed budget.
Yeah.
And
And the children
I
are
mean,
affected. Yes.
clearly my aunts and uncle visit the site, and so it wasn't for nothing. But it's also like, I don't know.
It's a burden.
Even yeah, the salesperson took us on a tour, and I'm just like, um, this is not, this doesn't feel warm, inviting, like a place like a sanctuary, a place where I would think that my family is at rest. In fact, when I parked my car,
Mm-hmm.
there was some old man driving his little Ford Fusion. And I mean, even with all the backup cameras and side view mirrors, couldn't quite back into like parallel park, and just drove up onto the grass, which
Mm-hmm.
means that his tire ran over a plot.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so I just thought, can you imagine
Uh,
trying to sit there and like spend time with your
you,
loved one, and then some asshole in a fucking Camry is like struggling to parallel park, driving over my mama's plot.
mm-hmm.
It
Yeah,
just,
you should have asked for desecration statistics.
yeah. And then I felt bad. Oh my God, I learned so much. They have, so, the grave site where they bury you in the ground. Then they have the mausoleums where you can put caskets. And apparently they sell them, like, all of them are for two, which was another thing that I didn't love. Like, so my mom's paying for two spots, even
Yeah.
though it's just her. Because I'm not, like, I don't want to be buried in there with her, and neither does my sister. So it's like, okay, so you're buying this big ass space for just your little self. Oh my God. And then I asked the lady about plus size
Mm-hmm.
spaces, and she was so bothered by that. Like, I'm just curious. Like, she's like, well, your mother's not plus size. And I'm like, well, I might be I'm just curious. Like, what happens? She did not think any of this was amusing. I'm like, can you show me the mausoleum for the plus size people? And she's like, well, I don't think that'd be very respectful of them.
Can you just knock out the wall between
Oh,
the two spaces?
but you all like canvassing the grounds to try to sell people plots. That's respectful. Literally, as we were driving around, there were salespeople, because it's like a busy day.
Oh yeah, of course.
Child, they were all out there approaching families sitting at like
Oh, of
gravesites.
course. Yeah, that's prime time, man. What did with the plus size body, do they do like what they do with panini sandwiches and press them until they fit?
Well, she's like, well, the only thing. Well, then she goes, well, if you can fit in the casket, you can fit in the space. So then it's like, oh, so just shove the body, like break the limbs apart, like what?
We had to do a pretzel thing with his arms to get him in there. That's
I
actually a comedy scene from a movie you could write right there.
maybe I'll be like Phaedra Parks and start my own mortuary and cemetery, but it's gonna be like for the people who think death is like something to look forward to. Maybe that's my future.
Funny death funeral home.
I want to flip death upside down. Like, this is the time to celebrate. This is fun. Like
some Pennywise, Ronald McDonald looking signage.
yeah, like what? Oh my God, just like being there, because I spent a good portion of my Saturday at the cemetery,
Ugh.
which did end with something nice, but which I'll get to. But yeah, some like maybe it'll be me that sort of approaches death in a different way, or maybe you want to see the body being cremated, or maybe
there is the tagline right there: death in a different way.
death in a different way. Maybe for your family member who you hated, we'll let you light them on fire. I mean, I don't know. Or let you throw the dirt on top of the body.
We will. We have a swimming pool in back, and we'll reenact a Viking funeral pyre.
Or maybe we have a death pit where you just throw the body in there, and then like microorganisms like eat away at them or something. I don't know. You can throw, like, you've always wanted to throw hot grease on someone. Now's your chance.
You want to see maggots crawling out of their flesh?
But that's my cemetery story. But moving on to the restaurant section, my mom, again, always trying to figure out ways to spend time with us instead of just being like, I'd like to see you. Like, there always
Hmm.
has to be a thing. But there's a restaurant by her house, and it's like a burger shop. Original Troy's Burgers number 10.
It's called Original Troy's Burgers number 10.
Yeah, so
Okay.
original. So then for some reason, I feel like it should be number one, but
Original Troy.
because
Okay.
I was trying to research and I think this is the first location. So I don't know why it's called number 10, but
Maybe that was a street
oh,
number.
maybe.
Uh,
Well, and it's like in a little shitty plaza, and it looks exactly like
Maybe that's the plaza number.
or yeah, the unit number. But it looks like any Southern California like hole in the wall restaurant in like a shitty plaza. But but it's like on the way to my mom's place. So every time she and I drive by, she's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to try it," but she won't go anywhere to eat by herself.
Hmm.
So I'm like, okay, well, after the cemetery, I had already told her, like, let's plan to have like a late lunch at this place. And I have to say, I don't think I've had a burger that good in a long time because
Really?
it reminded me of like when I was a kid,
Hmm.
well, like a teenager, like in the 90s, and just those like, I think before fast food like ruined what a burger is.
Yes. Hmm.
Because burgers, I think when I was younger, still like from a McDonald's or whatever, were still kind of okay, I think.
Hmm.
But yes, this I mean like the sesame seed bun and the Thousand Island and the meat, like it all felt.
Yeah, when you get a good burger, that's when you're like, oh, that's why this is a a dish that persists in our culture.
And then um the fries, like those big thick steak fries where it's like the outside's really crispy, but the inside is super soft and hot as hell. And
Mm.
that was really good. And then we got the bacon cheeseburger. So it was like lettuce, tomato, onion, Thousand Island dressing, a ton of bacon, a lot of cheese. And then, of course, my mom wouldn't order her own. So then we shared that. But then I ordered a burrito, like a
Oh.
breakfast burrito.
Mm-hmm. How continental.
And that burrito was so big and so filled with meat and so good. And then, like, even the salsa that they served. And then my mom asked for like a roasted pepper. And so for 75 cents, they'll give you like this big roasted pepper that they put on this really cute paper boat with lime.
Hmm.
And that food was not expensive. That
See?
burger with fries and a drink was like $13. That
Wow.
burrito was $10. And that burrito was
Were
huge.
you in the land before time forgot? Like, where
Right.
were
Now, granted, when you walk into the restaurant, it's like, "Ooh, I mean, this definitely hasn't been redone since the
you?
90s. And
Sure.
it was not cute, but clean.
Hmm.
And the staff was, you know, I mean, they were fast. They weren't friendly, but they were fast.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have everything, you know?
And yeah, I would 100% go back as a treat, But and the menu's pretty extensive. They sell fried chicken, and like I saw someone with a fried chicken plate that looked really good. And
Hmm.
but we should probably take a break. Okay, I know you got a lot of food in France while you were at Cannes.
France. Yeah. Well, actually, I ate out a lot less this year. I was probably really eating only one meal a day. Uh, towards the end, the last 2 days, I stuffed myself on pizzas as time was permitting. But uh, the main place that I probably is my favorite based on, you know, a 3-point system of price and friendly service and timely service. Is this
And
place?
what's the third point? The quality of food?
I think that I broke the
I
last
would
two
hope
out into it.
so.
Oh yeah, and good food.
If they're friendly and the price is good, I don't care if the food tastes like shit.
No, of course not. But how you get it to me and how fast you allow me to leave, because I've especially in Italy, I have been to places where it's like they don't want you to leave. They don't. I can't pay, uh, and then they look at you like I'm busy. I'm the only one here, and it's like, well, shouldn't there be a plan in place for
But I
that? I don't
noticed
know.
that in like a lot of foreign
Yeah,
countries
it's just
where it's
like
just like do you not want me to pay and leave? Like why won't you
like
but then
I
also
didn't.
they're not giving you good service, so it's like they don't give a shit.
Yeah, like I didn't come here to stay that day here.
Like hurry up to go pick up a check without a tip. No,
Yeah,
thank you.
right. Anyway, but I probably went the most to La Piazza, which is kind of at the very end of the Boulevard de la Croisette, which is a popular enough place. And I almost always get one of their pizzas, either the Diavola or the the Regina, not the Regina. I don't remember now. Um, but very fat. Like, not, I ordered that shit, and I get a brick oven pizza. That's delicioso to my mouth in less than 10 minutes. It's quite. I don't I I don't know how she does it. And I
Well, she probably has all that dough on deck.
Yes, I think they all just, it's very easy to make because I've been to that restaurant where they're like, we only have pizza right now. But I do know they have their own handmade pasta. So I've in the past have had good ravioli there, blah blah blah. But and then there's this place I ate with a group right across from that called Salta Morinca something. And one of the group parties angered the waiting staff by daring to ask what was taking the food so long. And then that took even longer. Anyway, and then another place called La Pizza Cresci, which used to be very popular. It probably still is, but they have a really good greasy pepperoni pizza.
Ugh.
Uh, and I only had that twice in the 2 weeks I was there. I can't eat that too much because it feels like a lot. My friend that likes to go with me always asks for champignons, some mushrooms, and the shit that I've learned at that place never to ask for additions because when you get the mushrooms, it is those straight out the can mushrooms, like
Mhm.
out the. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I hate mushrooms, so just thinking about mushrooms out of a can is like, ugh.
Oh, they have a very specific texture and flavor canned mushrooms, and they just dump some that no, and charge me an extra like €4. No, mm-mm. I don't care if I got the whole can of mushrooms. Those aren't good mushrooms. Anyway, yes, and then I brought you home. Since I've been going in 2013, every year I bring you home this. It's from the grocery store, but it's really good brioche. Uh,
Yeah, it, it's amazing how the quality of, because it comes like how you buy Wonder Bread, like
yeah.
it's just in the store like that. But
Hmm.
the quality of this brioche is better than most of the shit that like fresh baked brioche you would get here. And then you brought me this almond croissant.
Oh yeah.
That shit was so good.
There's a place, I think it's a chain. It's called Copenhagen Coffee Lab. And one year at the Forshville Market, this is a couple years ago, I happened to have time one morning. I stopped, and this very friendly British lady uh, was just chatting me the fuck up. And she's like, "Oh, I highly recommend our almond croissants." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll try one." And they were delicious. And when I tried to go back to bring you home some that year, they were closed because I think I was leaving on a Sunday. So I made sure there was one where I was staying, there was one very near me. So I got up early and got you some the morning I flew out. And yeah, they're still pretty good. They made it a whole, however, how many hours was I in transit? 20, 25.
Yeah, it was good.
But they're pretty good.
Moving on to the sorry to this man section. It's not so much a mistake, but so YouTube now, I received an email, like one of those YouTube creator emails that's always trying to get us to do something different, but
Mm-hmm.
it let me know that I can sync our podcast with our YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
So now all 160 some podcast episodes are on YouTube,
Oh,
just as
I noticed that you did that while
just
I
as
was.
audio.
Mm-hmm.
And so of course, like, none of them are really getting any streams because I'm, whatever, except the one for Baby Reindeer.
Mm-hmm.
So then I received like comments, emails, DMs about Baby Reindeer, and some things that people pointed out that I think is interesting is that the episode one, it doesn't say it's based on a true story. It says this is a true story.
Okay.
So that kind of changes things a little bit, especially in my argument that, like, I mean, because then other comments I received were like, well, but at the end of every episode, it says like these characters are based on da da da, and it's not whatever. And so that clears them of any legal
Yeah.
responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean, yeah, of course. So sure. But what I'm saying is that I think clearly in the modern age with technology, social media, all these internet sleuths, maybe we need to change how we, like privacy and people's information, and like it's really easy. I mean, a lot of people out there are real good at, like, oh, you meet someone at a bar and you know that they know this person, and within like 20 minutes you find like all their info online just by
Mhm.
connecting a few dots.
Mhm.
So then you think like, yeah, like a movie or TV show, particularly if it goes viral, like if you're saying this is a true story, people are going to take that and run with it.
Sure. So I don't know. People are they just need to it's a simple fix. Just put in some kind of asterisk like y'all know, but by the way, some of this shit is fake or exaggerated, so just that's the kind of verbiage I would use. Lay the fuck off.
There were also comments about, I guess, me not mentioning that the lady sexually assaulted the man. And I didn't say that she didn't. I just didn't highlight that she did. She does in the
She
series
massages his
grab his
genitals,
genitals,
yeah.
and then he sort of,
And he's stuck because and
right,
that's what is powerful about that moment because we learn what's happened to him that kind of gets him stuck in that moment, you
right.
know. But yeah, she does assault him.
Yeah. All right. Films released we didn't cover. The Garfield movie.
Oh God.
I had no interest in this at all.
I know because you could have gone while I was in France, but
Yeah.
you know it is directed by Mark Dindal, who did The Emperor's New Groove, which I quite love that film with Eartha Kitt as Yzma. But yeah, Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson. You know, they had a Garfield movie back in 2004 that was a huge. I think it was.
Neil Patrick Harris?
mm,
Was he in that?
I remember Jennifer Love Hewitt and Bill Murray, but
Oh,
I remember that not. I never saw it, and I'm still not interested in watching a Garfield movie. But yeah,
the 2004 movie.
yeah,
Who is in that?
isn't it Jennifer Love Hewitt?
Chris Pratt, Samuel L. Jackson,
Oh, this is
Nicholas.
that's the new one.
Oh, I'm
Sorry, it's Chris
sorry.
Pratt. Who did I say? Ryan Reynolds. Anyway,
You're
Jesus.
saying 2004.
Yes, it's Chris Pratt in the new one, I believe.
Well, speaking of Ryan Reynolds, I went to go see If to review it by myself,
That's why I'm. Yeah,
but then I was experiencing some lower GI
and I
distress,
forgot to
and
tell you, the publicist was asking where my review was for that because it's there was a record of someone from blah 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 showing up.
uh,
Yes.
yeah, well,
Anyway,
but yeah, the 2004 film was Bill Murray, Breckin Meyer, Jennifer Love Hewitt.
ugh.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, one of the films I saw at Cannes that I probably won't talk about it in on the video we will do, but was a Japanese anime film that was completely crazy and weird called Ghost Cat Anzu. Which all I could think was watching this is what I need Garfield movie to be in order for me to be interested at all. But
Oh, well,
but that was one of the most bizarre anime films I've seen in a long time. And you know, it's made by G Kids, so it's technically a kids movie, and that shit gets fucking dark.
oh,
Because this girl's mother is trapped in hell, like as a cleaning woman, and they go to hell, and all these demons come back to Earth and beat up all these anthropomorphized things.
God.
It was very Japanese.
Well, the Garfield movie is rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, so I'm sure I would have been annoyed by it.
Who wants this? Jesus.
Next, The Beach Boys.
Yeah, a new documentary about the Beach Boys, directed by very notable producer Frank Marshall alongside Tom Zimney. I don't really have an interest in watching a documentary about the Beach Boys, but I guess I'm surprised there wasn't something more comprehensive about them before. But
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I always think of uh, Full House. Isn't John Stamos obsessed with the Beach Boys in that?
Oh wow.
Is that right?
I think that might be right actually.
Uh, yeah, that's anyway.
Lastly, Kidnapped.
This was at Cannes in 2023, a new Marco Bellocchio, and I quite like this film. It's based on a true story. It's similar, kind of maybe in the scope and tone to something like Ridley Scott's All the Money in the World, but it is, I think, pretty because it's the additional title they added to it for the release in the US is The Abduction of Edgardo Mortara, which I believe changed some laws in the country. And it's a period piece set in 1858. But I have to say, what I remember most from this film is a really great score that's kind of bombastic and kind of crazy and adds this uh, kind of to me a fun element. But to shout out the composer Fabio Massimo Carpogrosso, Yeah, so if you're a Bellocchio fan who's been making great films since the late 60s, I highly recommend it. Oh, speaking of Bellocchio, while I remember, Kristen Stewart has signed on to the new film directed by Karim Enuz, the Brazilian filmmaker who was just in Cannes competition as well. And I happened to look at the film credits, and Bellocchio was listed, and I haven't had time to look this up. I'm pretty sure that the new Karima News with Kristen Stewart is going to be a remake of Bellocchio's probably most well-known film, Fist in the Pocket.
Oh,
Is It's called Rosebush Pruning, all one word, and it's about some dysfunctional fucking family on a country estate. Um, and Yorgos Lanthimos's usual scribe Efthemis Philippou is the screenwriter, but Bellocchio on there, they must be remaking Fist in the Pocket. Anyway,
projects of interest. Mother.
I'm not really interested in this except for how fucking much of a mess I think it's going to be. But Numi Rapace is going to be playing Mother Teresa
Oh boy.
in a film directed by a Macedonian woman who's actually I've seen almost all of her films. Tiona Stugard Matevsky. I don't know. Do we need Numi Rapace as Mother Teresa?
Well, what if they make it like this dark,
Because I've read
like
lots of
thriller?
theories about Mother Teresa, about how she was kind of addicted to human pain as like a glorification of the tension for herself.
Yeah. What if it's like has martyrs vibes?
Yes, I did. There are multiple ways to look at Mother
Like she
Teresa.
was a sadist or something.
Yes, like she depended on people suffering for her work to continue. Almost, there's a weird relationship correlation going on there with her, but it's not going to be that. But I'd be interested if it was.
The Wizard of the Kremlin.
Olivier Assayas, I can't remember. So a lot of the projects that I was most interested by at the Cannes Film Market, I think we've already talked about because they had already been previously announced, and now they're being padded out with notable cast members since the writers and actors strikes have finally ended. Um, so I can't remember if this was a project I already knew about. I like Olivier Assayas a lot. I hated his last movie that was in Berlin. That was about his personal COVID experience. But Alicia Vikander and Jude Law, who were just, again, to talk about Karim News, were in his movie last year, Firebrand, uh, are part of the cast, as is Zach Galifianakis, which makes me give pause, but I'll watch it.
Should I tell this story? Maybe.
Tell us.
This will be random. Um, I did this woman's hair several many times, who was at that time Zach Galifianakis' girlfriend.
Okay.
And I forget what movie it was, but one day she had an appointment to do her usual, and she's like, "Oh," and she was like a light brown color,
Her hair or skin?
her hair.
Okay.
She was a white lady,
Okay.
a really nice. She was also a comedian, a really nice lady. And she, oh wow,
Okay.
I hope people can't put two and two together, but
We're just talking
um,
about baby reindeer
yeah.
investigations, but okay.
But anyway, um, she's like, "Oh, he has a movie premiere tonight, and he wants me to be blonde."
Oh God.
And I'm like, "Okay."
He wants me to be blonde.
And
Okay.
I'm like, "Okay, well,
Uh,
so you wanted me to make you blonde right now?" So that was stressful because first of all, it's like, well, that's, you know, I'm not going to go into how much work it would be to take someone who's like box brown to try to lighten them all over to be like light blonde. But my
on a
stupid
spur of the
ass,
moment, yeah.
and then also like I was also booked, so it's like I don't have time, but like she's a good customer, like let me try. Anyway, it required like a full head of foil highlights, right? So then, you mix bleach with developer and do the highlights, blah blah blah. So and then you mix the bleach in batches so it's fresh and different strengths so it all lightens evenly. So I started the back of her head. I'm putting in the foils. I get done with that batch, go make another slightly stronger batch so that the next section of hair can catch up to the previous section. And it's at that second section where I'm like 2/3 of the way done with her head that I realized that the bleach I was using and the developer, like that I was mixing together, that developer was not developer. it was like a clear, like gloss type product.
Mm-hmm.
So the equivalent would be like if you think you're putting regular unleaded in your car, but really you were putting Dasani water. And like,
Ooh.
I mean, it just, so it wasn't doing anything. So all the bleach, so it was just like powdered bleach without developer in these foils.
Mm-hmm.
So of course it kind of did a little something, but when I realized that, I go, oh my god, because of the circumstances, like this was already too much to do today,
Mm-hmm.
and now I fucked it up, and her hair's gonna look like shit because when you know that light brown color, when you slightly lift it with this bleach that's not working the way it should, it had like a yellow orangey tinge to it.
Ooh. Uh-huh.
And I'm like, oh no. That was, I mean, that was when I think about why there were a few key moments of me doing hair that I think about, like why I wanted to stop doing hair.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably one of them. And
Okay.
so ultimately to fix that, I just had to make, like I had to color over it. Like there was no time to try to redo anything.
Mm-hmm.
So she ended up actually leaving slightly darker than when she came
Ooh.
in.
Zach beat her.
She was nice about it, but I never saw her again.
Oh, yeah.
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 So that was not great. But anyway, moving on to something called Deuce.
Pietro Marcello. Is it Deuce or
Or
Deuce?
Deuce.
Deuce. He's got a new project. I really liked his kind of novel adaptation of Jack London's Martin Eden, which he's probably best known for, and less so with his Scarlet, which open can director's fortnight in 2022. Anyway, Valeria Bruni Tedeschi and Naomi Merlon, who you should know her as she's Kate Blanchett's assistant in Tar, among many other things at this point. But yeah, there's a new project.
Two prosecutors.
Ukrainian filmmaker slash mostly documentarian Sergei Loznitsa is finally doing another narrative feature. I swear, almost every Cannes and or Venice, he's got some new documentary, but he hasn't had a narrative feature since 2017's A Gentle Creature, which I remember liking. Still hasn't come out in the U.S., which is an adaptation of a Dostoevsky novella that Robert Bresson previously had adapted. Yeah, he's got a new project. I hope it gets a new title, but so far, two prosecutors.
Last Breath.
The great Costa Gavras, still alive, has a new project. I think it's done filming, but notably Charlotte Rampling is among the cast members.
Lastly, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother.
This is exciting to me. Jim Jarmusch had finished a new film with Kate Blanchett and Adam Driver, who I believe are siblings, and dealing with a strange parent situation. So I'm assuming Charlotte Rampling. This I might have to wait till Cannes next year to see this, but it finished filming a couple weeks ago, so maybe Venice.
Well, unfortunately, there are entries in the obituary section. First, there's a young man named Johnny Wactor. His most prominent IMDb credit is he did over 160 episodes, I believe, of the soap opera General Hospital.
Oh, okay.
But the reason I mean, not because he's not significant, but the reason he popped up is he was killed on Saturday in downtown LA.
Oh.
He was 37 years old. So he works as a bartender. So he was leaving his job as a bartender at like 3 something in the morning. And when he got to his car, he saw a group of people standing around it. And so he confronted them because I think what I read was that maybe he thought that they were like towing his car. So that's why he chose to confront them.
Mm-hmm.
But they were actually those people who steal catalytic converters.
Oh.
And for people who don't know, that was like a crime during the pandemic that was on the rise because catalytic converters contain some precious metals that people can sell for, you know, not an insignificant amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Although new laws have been passed that are preventing like certain shops from buying catalytic converters without the person showing proof that they're the owner of the vehicle to
Mm-hmm.
try to curb sales, but or to curb thefts. But anyway, this guy went to confront these people who were stealing the catalytic converter from his car, and they shot and killed him.
Wow.
And that's just very upsetting to me.
Yeah.
For I mean obvious reasons, but it's just like, you know, you like worked all night long It's actually upsetting to me right now. Like you work all night long, and I'm sure he was tired and like walked to his car, and then you see some people doing some shit to your car, and like that's upsetting, and
Hmm.
then you just get shot. Like,
Yeah. Ugh. Wow.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I was like reading that, I was very, upset about it. Like it's just so shitty.
So
Like
pointless.
like
Yeah.
over a piece of like how much money? A few hundred
Like you
dollars.
couldn't just leave. You couldn't just fucking go. You got to
And I
shoot
know a
him.
lot of
Like,
people get shot and killed for less and more and all that, but I mean it's all upsetting. Like it's just so crazy. Like,
yeah.
and then Morgan Spurlock died.
Yeah.
Morgan Spurlock is a filmmaker who people might know mainly from the documentary Supersize Me from 2004,
Which I had never seen.
which neither of us had seen.
In fact, the only of his films I was familiar with previous to today was something I saw at TIFF called Rats in
Oh,
2016, which was presented as like a horror documentary about these creatures in set in four different cities.
but I'll separate this from the secret film just because Morgan Spurlock died. He was 53 years old, and apparently he died from
Cancer.
complications of cancer.
Hmm.
But we need to take a break. Today's secret film was my choice, and I, of course, chose the 2004 American documentary Supersize Me,
Yeah.
directed by and starring Morgan Spurlock, who we just mentioned died. I wanted to separate them because I don't have anything good to say about him. So in
Ooh.
this documentary, so I didn't want to sully my obituary listing with him, but
Okay.
I as well had never seen it. Of course, I knew about it. Uh, Basically, the documentary is about him. What is the did I even write down the what is the premise? Oh, the premise of this documentary. While examining the influence of the fast food industry, Morgan Spurlock personally explores the consequences on his health of a diet of solely McDonald's food for 1 month. I feel like this is making it seem like it's a more well-rounded and fair exploration, but this is not really an exploration of like how the fast food industry is making the American public sick. This is about him just saying like, attacking McDonald's. And I should say that my very first job when I was 16 was at a McDonald's.
My very first job interview was for
It
McDonald's.
was?
Yeah, but I didn't get hired.
Oh, I think I know the
I've
story.
told you that
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Because there were accusations made,
There were accusations, yes,
false claims against
about
your
me being high, even though my mother was with me at the
someone
interview.
cast aspersions on your
They
character.
did. Thankfully, Walmart down the street was didn't feel the same way.
Walmart's always hiring
They're
the
like,
dregs.
well,
So
you know,
well, no, I don't want to say that. There are a lot of good people who work at
they
Walmart.
piss test you at Walmart. I had to supply a sample of my urine, so I was. What,
And that wasn't even for a drug test.
God, what was that line from Thinner? Die clean, white man from town, die clean. Anyway,
My first job was at McDonald's. I worked there my junior, senior year. I often think about that being such a great opportunity. And there used to be commercials that I don't, well, we also don't watch like regular TV with commercials, but there used to be a lot of commercials with people saying like I worked at McDonald's and now I'm this, like with the skills I learned, like it helped me become, a much bigger career, including management opportunities at McDonald's. Cause store managers make good money and they should. They're running like one store generates millions of dollars in revenue. So
hmm
you think if you're like a general store manager for McDonald's, you're managing the marketing, staffing, inventory of a multi-million dollar business. So it makes sense that these people make good salaries with good compensation outside of their salary. And then of course there are corporate opportunities. Franchise opportunities aren't as prevalent as they were like in the 80s, let's say, but I look back on that as kind of a miserable, sad time in my life, but I did learn a lot. And I think I've told the story before, but when towards the end of my tenure at McDonald's, I shared with my mom. So there was an assistant manager named Jennifer, this black. trans Jamaican woman
Mm-hmm.
who was mean as hell. And I was thinking as I was watching this, like who would play her in a movie? And um, I just forgot the actor's name. The
From
woman from Dominique Jackson.
Dominic. Oh
If
yeah.
you mix Dominique Jackson with Grace Jones, that's exactly
Oh, I
how.
want to see that person on screen. That
Oh
sounds
my god!
amazing.
I mean, she was striking
Mm-hmm.
in person, like, but was mean as hell. That lady used to make me do all kinds of crazy shit, and I'm sure back then, being like a, I mean, I'm half dumb now, so imagine me at 16. But I just didn't understand why she was so mean, and I don't know that I
Do
do
you
now.
think, looking back, that she was actually being mean, or she was just probably stern, and that was her way of being professional?
Looking back, yes, I think that it was a combination of her, being this black trans woman in the mid 90s in, the Inland Empire,
Yeah,
and having to just, sort of be tough for those reasons. And then also dealing with a bunch of stupid teenagers
stupid teenagers, and then I'm sure
who are lazy.
rude ass
I
customers.
mean, me as a 16-year-old, I can't even imagine how lazy I was because I'm lazy now. So
Well,
I mean, I get a lot done. I get more done. I mean, I get a lot done
you do,
compared to the average person,
yeah,
but
but
compared to my abilities, like I could do more.
mm,
But the she, I think it was just a shock to me, like how much, you know what it is,
hmm,
and it's funny now that I'm a middle-aged person and I work with people, and I think this about other people, like no one ever taught you how to work. Like you want to collect this money every 2 weeks, but you don't want to do anything. And when I ask you for something during your supposed working hours, you act like I'm asking you for a favor, like on a Sunday afternoon. Like,
right. Mm-hmm.
no, bitch, it is Wednesday at 10 o'clock. You're getting paid. You need to supply me with what I asked you for within the hour. So I think looking back, just imagining her having to be so strict and to try to get work out of us. And one distinct memory is because I was in high school, I had to work on the weekends mainly. So I would
Mm-hmm.
work Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday mornings. And, there's a law that, or I remember there being rules about, like, because I'm 16, and then
Yes,
like
yeah.
you
There's.
had so many hours had to pass before you could go back to work. And I remember working at McDonald's until like midnight on
Mm-hmm.
Friday nights, like when they close. But then I'd have to be back at 5 a.m. for the breakfast, like to open by 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, by the time I get home, go to bed, and then wake up to come back, I was getting like 3 hours sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And this was every weekend for 2 years. But this lady would make me take a rag. So I would have to take one of those plastic forks, or I'm sorry, plastic knife, cover it with a rag. And then all the little crevices, like in all the door jams, I would have to go and like clean them out. Like as if I were trying to clean toe jam out of your toenails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I remember, like, that's a very distinct memory I have of working at McDonald's. But I mean, I have a million other memories, but as far as it being shitty, that's one of them. But the reason for me bringing her up was that towards the end of my tenure, I told my mom, like, God, Jennifer is so mean, like my assistant manager. And I didn't find out until many years later. Like, I think I was in my 30s when my mom told me that after I told her that, she confronted that lady with a baseball bat,
Your mom's weapon of choice.
my mom's weapon of
Uh,
choice, and basically threatened her to like not be so mean to me. And I did notice her act different towards the end of my tenure.
tenure.
Um, but
Anyway,
that's my
yeah.
relationship to McDonald's. I do eat McDonald's regularly. Everyone know. I mean, I get comments on Instagram anytime, like people, because I like to use the app and coupons, and so I do. I am a fan of McDonald's. I don't think their food is great.
Yeah, you do go there. I rarely eat anything at
I
McDonald's.
think it's just nostalgia plus convenience plus, but anyway, yeah, the documentary Supersize Me is just an assault on McDonald's by this man, Morgan Spurlock. And I really didn't like this documentary. You seem to like it more than I do.
Well, I know. I think it's as a conversation starter. I think there are some things that are interesting. I think as a time capsule of 2004 and attitudes and there were some behaviors of his that I was like, oh, he seems like so many straight white men that think they're smart that I have known throughout my life. That rubbed me the wrong way, but I don't think it's complete garbage. But I think that it is highly compromised in a lot of ways that his tactics are questionable for sure.
So the premise of this, well, first of all, I think like with documentaries like this, it's like, what's the inspiration? What's the thesis? What do you like? What's your connection to this subject? And for this one, I just think Morgan Spurlock, I really didn't like his personality. He seems like he just wanted to make a name for himself. And so he came up with this idea to make a documentary. But it's like, he doesn't really explain his connection to,
Other than that lawsuit that those girls had,
well,
yeah, that had published about blaming McDonald's for their weight issues,
well, so
health
that's the
issues.
reason like why he's doing this approach. But like him as the filmmaker and subject, it's like, what is his connection to this? All he says is, oh, my mom was a homemaker and she cooked every dinner for us.
Mhm.
And he presents himself like he's super healthy. When I look at him, I don't think of someone who's
Because,
like,
well, because if you think about it, well, one, he come to find he wasn't super healthy.
well,
Uh,
we'll get to it, but
but actually, for doing this, we should have had something to compare data to. So we should have had at least an equivalent amount of data of what his body and
well,
habits are before he embarked on
we'll
this.
get to that because I think that's the crux of my issue. But first off, I don't understand his connection to this subject. It's not like, it would be different if the subject were someone who was an overweight teenager because they ate McDonald's and they got their life right. And now as an adult, they want to explore how bad fast food is for you. To me, that would make more sense.
Well,
But we don't
yeah.
understand his connection to this at all. He doesn't seem to have an issue with his weight. He seems, I mean, he has a nice body when he starts, even when he finishes, he looks better than the average person. But
But you don't have to have a problem with weight management to also have a problem with food, because
no, of
I
course.
think we all I think we all have kind of a fucked up relationship with food, and it doesn't really translate to our bodies initially per se, or how we look. But I think we all have a kind of a strange, or a relationship with food that has mm, that causes problems for us at some
Well, we
point.
can talk about that more when we talk about how people responded to it. But I think, okay, so then there's the subject, Morgan Spurlock, who to me just seems like he's doing this because he wants to make a name for himself.
Mhm.
Okay, then the actual experiment, like you said, is based on a lawsuit where these two teenage girls are suing McDonald's for saying that it's McDonald's that made them fat. And then so the case got dropped. And then part of the initial exploration of the case was saying that they would have to show that McDonald's like knew that people who consume their food like on a regular basis would get fat.
Mhm.
And so that's what Morgan Spurlock decides to do. He's going to eat only McDonald's for 30 days. And then he sets up some guidelines. Like he has to eat he calls them square meals a day. So breakfast, lunch, dinner. He has to consume everything, like every item on the McDonald's menu at least once. Um,
And if McDonald's doesn't offer it, he can't eat it, right?
Right,
Mhm.
right. So and that includes water. So like on locations where they don't sell bottled water, then he just has to drink Coke, I guess. And then he has to supersize the meal, but only if offered. So like back when they used to say, would you like to supersize that? Then he has to say yes. And then he's not supposed to exercise, and he's not supposed to try try to walk more than, which he abandons very easily because
Mhm.
like the very first time he's like, oh well, that's a lot of steps, so I have to take cabs to the McDonald's. Side
Mhm.
note, we see him in an office several times as if he's like some like big shot movie maker. He doesn't give us any indication of what his life is like outside of just eating this food. But
Uh-huh.
then he eats the food for 30 days, and of course, as we would expect, based on what we see him eating, that he's probably going to gain weight and feel like shit. And then he brings on three medical, or not, they're not all medical doctors. There's one DO, but all three physicians to monitor his care, and then a dietitian.
Mhm.
Okay, My first problem is this is not science. This is not the scientific method. You can't call this an experiment. You're not following the rules. Like, you're not collecting data, you're not sharing data, there's not a control. Like you said, what are you comparing this shit to?
Hmm.
And then why are you not adhering to what the doctors are telling you? Also, there's no basis for like,
Well, it's because the dietitian, the blonde woman, keeps telling him like, okay, you are, the data that you're providing me, you are eating more than you need, but the these the his goal is to prove that McDonald's is eating there is unhealthy when he should be doing the opposite of uh doing what she says to eat the more beneficial items and then still being able to prove that it's not healthy to eat there would be, proving his hypothesis, right?
right.
But he's not doing that.
So he ends up in the end, his levels are crazy, right? Like his cholesterol shoots up like 60 plus points. He gains over 24 pounds in a 30-day
His
period.
liver's like pate.
And so, of course, the documentary ends like, see, told you, like eating like shit will make you feel like shit. And eating a diet of mostly like fat and carbohydrates and not exercising will cause you to, well, an extreme amount of fats and carbohydrates will cause you to gain weight without exercise. So I guess I proved my point. And then
Mhm.
we see that he was able to lose 20 pounds within 5 months of through some detox diet, which we'll get to, and then that it took him like another year to lose the extra 4.5 pounds.
These white people seem so fragile, my lord.
Okay, I have so many notes and thoughts, and I don't even know if I'll have time to get through them. But this is not science. This is a sensational mess conjured up by someone who wanted to make a name for themselves. That's
And they
it.
did got
This
an
feels
Oscar
so
nod.
this feels so unfair. Like, why McDonald's? Like this, like you're not examining the fast food industry. You're like they're like they sprinkle it throughout, but overwhelmingly it's like McDonald's is so bad for you. Look at this food. Look, but then you're also binging at every meal.
Yes. Well, I think part of, again, I don't think it's very well developed, but part of the harpooning of McDonald's is because they're the most aggressive at at branding,
And marketing, and they
in
have the
marketing,
most store
hooking the
locations.
children,
But then getting to like people's reaction to it. First of all, it's like my very first thought is this feels really unfair towards one specific restaurant, because they're really hitting home this idea of like fast food, and then kind of examining like, well, a lot of people eat there because they don't have money. But then it's like, well, there are other like socioeconomic issues that tie into this that I think
lots. Yes.
that if you don't mention them, it's like you're kind of, I mean, it's not really, you can't take this seriously. Then, okay, I read some things about how this is sort of discriminatory towards fat people. And I think that it does feel very dismissive of the fact that you already mentioned this, that many of us have, I mean, I think most of us have food issues, and some of
Yeah.
us have like extremely serious food issues.
Hmm.
And some of us you might not be able to tell because we're not morbidly obese. But I think that fitness and nutrition are very personal. And I think it's kind of shitty to just make these like blanket statements like, well, you're so fat because you eat like that. And it's like, well, it's more than that, right? Like
Yeah.
people's, it's for some people, it's a form of self medication. And it's like, you know, people do that in other forms. It's just that it's so easy to take shots at people who are fat, right? Like you wouldn't make fun of a fucking crackhead the way you would someone who weighs 500 pounds. Like for some reason, food issues, particularly people being overweight, seems to be something that people feel more comfortable making fun of.
Well, because I think there's a man that says something about a dinner party about how a woman that was a smoker gets castigated, but the fat woman next to her does not, even though those things are very similar. But the thing that is similar about both of those, and I think, I think people are fat shamed, especially in the gay community, but is because they're preventable. It's seen as being preventable that you don't have to be fat, that you don't have to smoke. Those are preventable health risks that you don't need to take, right?
Which they're more nuanced than that,
It is, but
particularly for eating. And I think that to just spend 90 minutes saying like, this food is awful and look like it makes you fat and feel gross, like, okay, but
feel gross after you digest it, but in the moment you feel good. There's a difference.
Well, there's a positive feedback loop when it
Hmm.
comes to eating certain types of foods. I mean, it's very psychological. It's just complex, and I think that
It's co-
like I don't know what angle he was trying to take, because if you want to attack like the fast food industry, that's one thing. The best part of which we'll get to is we spent a little time with him at a public school, which I can't believe they allowed him into the school to interview people. But him sort of talking to the person who runs the food, the cafeteria, talking about the quality of the lunches. Then we have some other person at a school for at-risk youth and how they adopted a more nutritious approach and how the kids are better behaved there. I thought that was the most effective part. So that could have been an angle. But then the other portion that I think really feels dismissive and disrespectful is that food is a sort of like again a source of comfort for some people. It could be a form of self-medication, self-harm. Some of us use food to harm ourselves,
yeah.
to
Hmm.
punish ourselves. So it's very complicated, and maybe because I have food issues, I'm like topics like this really. But I think if you're an empathetic person, you can translate that to people with drug and alcohol issues, right?
Hmm.
Like
Oh, but I mean, food and your parents' relationship to food, that has a very big effect on you as a child. Like my father's family had a significant trauma when they lived in California, and he gained a ton of weight as like a fifth and sixth grader, and was held back in school. So we grew up, my sister and I, very early with the mantra at home was like, I don't want fat kids.
right.
But my parents, in their own fucked up each relationship with food, meant that there would be weird periods of binging,
Yeah.
like we're eating all this right now. Okay.
Well, and my dad and like yeah, my parents also. My mom is obsessed with being thin and has
Hmm.
always been really thin and eats like a bird, but then also loves to cook and force feed everyone. And then there are three siblings, and we all have very different relationships to food.
Hmm.
I have the worst. My sister has the best, and then and then my dad. I'm just like my dad. Like we have the same body, we have the same, and he struggled with food, and we would have bouts of just like you said, where he's trying to be super fit,
Hmm.
and we can't have any sugar in the house,
Yep.
and he would go
And
like
if you
like for long runs every day, and then sometimes it would just be like, oh, we're buying bags of cookies and just eating them all week. Like
Yeah, or if we did, we'd have these, because food is also entertainment, and your family. It like on the weekends we'd get pizza or something, or like it would be under the guise of a treat, but then the language right before and after would be, my dad used to like to be like, oh, we're eating junk food, we're all gonna be fat, and then immediately after eating it, all kinds of, it's like he was looking for some kind of expiation for
yeah.
having eaten all this food, and it's like that fucks up kids. Let
But
me
the
tell
point
you.
of these, but I think the point of sharing these stories is that this issue is complex, and in this documentary, the form it takes, I feel, is just really rudimentary, basic, exploitative, sensational. It's just tired. Like,
It's tired because also, like, that there are going to be some side effects, and it's so hyperbolic, like his stupid little vegan chef girlfriend who's like, I didn't know this was going to be such a dangerous experiment.
well, let
Okay.
me continue through these notes. So at one point, someone makes the comment like, "Well, people know that this food is not good for them," and I thought, I don't think people know that. And then we were talking about this film earlier, but I have an ex who is a surgeon, and the firm he worked for, they did bariatric surgeries as part of their as part of what they do. And
Hmm.
so I remember him saying that they would have to have like anyone. He didn't. His specialty was not the bariatric surgery, but one of his partners did do them. And so what they would do is like anyone who went in for a consultation, they would have to have another one of the physicians basically like approve it. It's like a second opinion. And so his role in that regard was to do like go through a questionnaire. And I remember him and I remember all the questions he said he would ask, but one that would stick out to me that I would always be interested in is he would ask these people who are obviously, obese, have food and weight issues. He would ask them to describe what a healthy meal looks like.
Hmm.
And I was always fascinated by what these people would describe as a healthy meal, because it was either something very like rabbit food, right? Like
Hmm.
lettuce and
Salad.
So like immediately, like this person is making healthy food options like gross and unsatisfying.
Hmm.
But the other version that was more intriguing was that basically people would describe like a dinner.
Hmm.
So like meatloaf with mashed potatoes and peas, or like spaghetti and meatballs with garlic bread, or um something that doesn't translate to like burgers and fries or pizza or
But kind of adheres to this 1950s
yes.
idea of what an American household would prepare,
And so watching this documentary, I thought, I don't know that people, well, because we're certainly not educating people on nutrition. So it's like,
among anything else. But
so
yeah.
I don't know that people realize that this food is not good for them. I think a lot of people, I mean, just based off of other things you can buy and sell in this country, I think a lot of people think, well, if I can buy it, it must be okay.
Yes. Hmm. We are very much
So
fooled into that.
so I
Yeah.
don't think that we should just assume that people who make unhealthy food choices know better. I think that you could, I mean, I think it's very fair to think that some people don't know that this that they could make better choices. And
Yes.
like, or that we
Well,
you already mentioned the nutritionist, but we should go ahead and talk about her too, because the thing that frustrated me the most is that she was not that adamant about you shouldn't eat McDonald's, which I find funny because at one point in the documentary, he says that he interviewed or contacted 100 nutritionists. We
mhm.
called 100 nutritionists, and basically all of them, and we hear some sound bites from some of them basically saying like, you
What
should never eat McDonald's
you should never eat fast food.
or fast food.
Yeah.
But then the nutritionist who he hires that we see, this lovely blonde lady, she doesn't actually say that. She's you can tell that they probably edited her like they edited her in a way that kind of minimized the fact that what she's trying to say is like nutrition, like there's a science to nutrition, right? We
Yes.
know how many calories are required to do XYZ, what turns into fat, how it turns into fat. We That science exists. This documentary is not discovering anything new. And so you can eat McDonald's. You just have to stay within a certain range, right? When you talk about like fat from calories, saturated fat, all that shit.
Well, that's just like that. That's what is the not Jenny Craig or what
Weight
Weight
Watchers.
Watchers, where you are logging your calories.
Well, so she tells him, like, I think for your age, activity level, size, you should do a 2,500 calorie approach per day.
Hmm.
So he just totally throws that out the window. But it's like, because then this leads to some subsequent documentaries. Because after this film aired, people had a lot of questions. And even I did watching it. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to what you're eating. You're binge eating at every meal to the point where it's making you physically sick. Like, we see him vomiting at a point. And
Yeah.
it's like, no,
When has that ever happened? I don't know that I've ever gorged myself to. That's the other thing. Like, I don't know that.
again, it feels sensational. Like, this
Yeah.
is crazy. Like, even
And whoever is behind the camera being like, "That's so gross. I'm getting sick watching you." Like,
again,
okay.
I have a lot of experience in this area, and I just think that what he was doing was just sensational. It
Yes.
doesn't make sense. Like, yeah, sometimes, like if your intention is to binge, and then either you're going to purge or you end up realizing you need to, it just felt like he was kind of sort of mocking that idea
Yeah.
more than like an actual experience.
Yeah.
But why didn't he follow the 25 calorie approach? Because after the film aired and people questioned it, and like different nutritionists and scientists said like this doesn't make sense, like, and because he didn't provide a log of what he ate, it's like we can't. And then
Yeah.
there's a subsequent documentary that actually the person did eat only McDonald's but followed like a caloric restriction, and that person lost weight.
Well, it's funny because Supersize Me wants to highlight Jared Fogle, who history
Oh
has shown
God.
has other problems, but he wasn't eating the fattiest. Jared Fogle wasn't eating the most caloric sandwiches at Subway
Well,
either every
also
day.
I eat a lot of fast food and I eat a lot of crazy things, but it's also like, yeah, I'll eat a McDonald's, like I'll get a quarter pounder mainly because with the app they're free because I have so many points. So if I'm running, like if I'm running late or whatever, it's been a busy day, I didn't have lunch, I'll stop and get like a quarter pounder. But that's all I'm getting. I'm not
Mhm.
ordering fries, I'm not ordering a Coke.
A
Like
milkshake.
right, I'm just eating the quarter pounder. or I'll get a breakfast. Like if I want a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, then I probably won't get a latte.
Sure.
You know, because then that has, the dairy and the sugar from the syrup. There are ways to enjoy food
Mitigate.
that you like,
Hmm.
right? And have some control with it. But in this documentary, he doesn't attempt that at all. So it feels like a full on assault against McDonald's in particular. And then I'm thinking, well, it's too bad McDonald's would never try to clap back at this documentary. But from a marketing and PR standpoint, I know exactly why they wouldn't, and they didn't.
Hmm.
And it's because if they did, then they would have to actually admit that their food isn't good for you.
Although I think a couple months after it came out, they stopped the Supersize Me
They
thing.
did, and they said it was.
Because as I was watching this, I can't remember the last. I don't believe I ever supersized anything, but this seems like such a time capsule.
It does. We need to take another break though. I was afraid this podcast was going to be too short, and now it's too long. But anyway, okay, let me try to get through these notes. I didn't like Morgan Spurlock. I think he's hammy and deliberate in a way that feels gross, and smarmy. And that his damn girlfriend, that vegan chef,
Oh my
I
god!
couldn't stand that lady. First
But
of all, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think that he did this documentary to spite her because he didn't like her. And then her food, she's a vegan chef, and the food they showed of hers, didn't that shit look nasty?
It did. He was married 3 times, so I don't know if she was one of those wives, but
I think she was.
I think she had problems with the ladies. Anyway, why wasn't part of this a segment also like for 30 days I ate completely clean, raw, organic, and what does that do to my
Well,
body?
the
Like what?
end of the film is she plans this detox diet for
Oh
him. And then
God.
we see that through the detox diet, he lost 20 pounds in 5 months, which feels crazy. Like,
If you were gay, those would have been
if
gone
I
in
do,
2 weeks.
that's what I was thinking. So wait, so you went from eating this awful McDonald's diet that caused you to gain 24 pounds in 30 days, but it takes you 5 months to lose 20 pounds, um, doing a clean vegan diet, detox diet.
Mm,
Because when
mm.
I do Whole30,
Oh,
I lose 17 pounds in 30 days.
yeah. It's. I mean,
And I'm eating like a lot. It's just not the food I like, but I'm eating a lot. Of course, there's a science to it, and I'm not saying that he and I would lose weight at the same rate, but it just feels like there should have been equal time spent on how yeah. There's
but
just so much that could have been done to make this a more fair, well-rounded examination of this topic.
there is. I think one of the few things that I think is a good point it makes is how you feel psychologically when you're eating shit food. Like it's your body. It all is in correspondence, and so
Well,
yeah.
let's take a break then to talk about that, because after the documentary came out, and all the backlash, and then that kind of died down, and Morgan Spurlock started like he went on to produce and
His own
direct other
production
things.
company. Yeah, many
But
things.
in 2017, what did this fool decide to do? Self Me Too himself, like to get ahead of the game. I don't know what he was thinking, but he basically tweeted about how he feels like he should, like, he doesn't want to, basically, like, now that everyone's being called out for sexual misconduct, that he doesn't want to wait for anyone to call him out. He's just going to do it himself. And so
Uh-huh.
he admits to sexual misconduct, and I guess thought that that would somehow,
Atone. That would be his atonement.
well, and be good PR for him, but it wasn't.
No,
It basically tanked his career. There was supposed to be a Supersize Me
there
2
was.
that never got released because,
I think it did,
or it did,
but
but
in like so in 27 I was at this Toronto Film Festival. They yanked it. They shut down the premiere. They took it off the
oh,
program, and then I think it took until 2019 for it to be released because it was coinciding with he opened his own fast food restaurant called Holy Chicken because that's the
oh,
name of
that's
it.
right. That's what it's called. Supersize Me 2 Holy Chicken.
So I have not seen that clearly, but yeah.
But okay, so in the documentary, the one doctor in particular, the internal medicine doctor, he's like, dude, like, also that doctor looked like hell. Like he he looked like he had also been eating McDonald's with his ass. But he he tells him, like, dude, your liver, the way it's reacting, like, I've never seen someone's liver act like this from eating like fat food. And at first I'm like, wait a minute, that seems crazy. Like, but a lot of people eat like shit, and you're telling me that they don't get sick like this.
Mhm.
But then we realized that no, the doctor's saying that the way his liver is reacting, it's almost like you were like a severe alcoholic. And then what do we learn
In
in
2017?
2017? He is a severe alcoholic. He says that I have been a whole ass drunk for the past 30 years and I've never been sober for more than a week at a time, and that he was fully drinking heavily during the filming of this documentary.
Uh,
And we see the one doctor ask him, "Do you drink?" And he says, "Well, not now."
I also think it's funny in those early interviews they're talking about what good genes he has. And it's like
Chill.
after he's died of we're watching this after he's died of
This
cancer.
is
It's
white
like
supremacy?
okay.
I don't think so. But he, when he said I'm not drinking right now, he meant like right now, like in this office with
Yeah.
me. But I had a drink before I
Today.
got here, and I'm gonna have one when I leave. So it's like all. So then, of course, reading about that is like he was drinking heavily during then. A lot of the symptoms that he had were probably who, like he was probably hungover. He was
Yeah.
because there's one moment towards the end with a really weird edit where he's shirtless and his body vanishes. Did you notice that? There's a
Yes.
really weird cut where he's saying like he sounds like he's drunk or hungover.
He seemed to well, he seems hungover and they keep saying that it's a food hangover. But I
No, like you knew damn well that you were fully like you drank a fifth of whiskey like right before you.
I mean that's dirty. Yeah.
But so I just feel like it's just it's really unfortunate because this is a very serious issue that I think in hindsight, looking at this person and their approach is just a joke. But anyway, there's that one French lady who he was talking to on the street. Do you recall her?
Oh my god, you caught the dumpiest looking French woman.
I was laughing so hard
I was
because
too.
she's dumpy and overweight, and the way she's talking about like, oh no, in France, like oh we don't eat like that, and it's like, well, bitch, how'd you get?
Well, I mean, that's why I wish we'd watched together because
You
we would
look
have been
like that little
howling.
girl in Willy Wonka who eats the blueberry. What you talking about? You
Yeah.
may not be eating McDonald's, but you eating something,
Well,
girl.
when she's like, the size of the soda here, I can't even finish it.
Girl,
Okay.
girl.
Sure.
I had an old roommate who would always make fun of me for my food issues, and he would always like, um, he would. One time he brought me like three macarons, which ain't shit. I could eat like 30 of
Uh
them,
huh.
but he brought me three, and I remember one time saying like, "Oh no, I'm not gonna like eat all three. Like I'll just have one." And for years after that, he would like the joke would be like, "Oh, I couldn't possibly eat all three." Like he would just constantly mock me. It's like, "Bitch, your fat ass wants to eat all of them." That's how that lady made me feel. Like, girl, not
I
not on video. You acting like you don't eat more than you should.
a lot of the people he's randomly talking to.
There was that one kind of handsome guy who's like, "Yeah, I eat fast food." I just thought, why include like, what's the point of including this good-looking man who clearly is not? I mean, we don't see his full body, but he doesn't look like he has a severe weight issue.
Well, it
And
is.
the way he's talking about fast food is like in a very like reasonable way. Like, yeah, I'll eat it sometimes. Like, like
Yeah. But mostly they're white. There's the two young black men that he's talking to that are like, I just got to do push-ups. I just
well,
like you got to do something to balance it out. This is how
well,
they
genetics make
yeah.
play a big portion in people's metabolisms, and
But did you
but
like how he was playing Queen's Fat Bottom
oh
Girls? No.
god. And then just to make this shit more ridiculous, why did we need to see his rectal exam? Like we see his ass.
Oh,
Like that's
yeah.
what you wanted to do? Okay.
Well, it's all about getting attention, you know.
I hated the scene where I think it's like day 4 or 5. It's it's whenever he vomits,
Uh-huh.
where when he gets the supersized item, he's acting like it's the first time he's ever seen it. He's like acting so surprised. And I just thought this is horrible acting.
Mhm.
You know damn well.
It is what he's doing is extremely performative.
Yeah, that I mean, I found that scene to be disgusting because I mean, I think it's mocking a very serious issue some people have.
Mhm.
And I'm not that delicate. Like sometimes the shit, I mean, I can make fun of eating disorders and I think I'm being funny, but like this shit is like, this is not a comedy. This is a documentary, and you're clearly like putting on a show.
Well, so
But
in a country where we have specific eating holidays where you are expected to stuff the fuck out of yourself, like that, people eat more during Thanksgiving and don't like.
Jared Fogle in this documentary, it's funny to watch it because they're like, oh, he's an inspiration
Yeah.
to the kids, and then we see him talking to this woman and her young daughter, and the daughter, she's saying like, you really inspired my daughter, you don't know how much you inspired the kids, and blah blah blah, and that girl standing there looking big as hell, and and then of course Jared talking about the kids, and it's like, oh, this is.
But then afterwards, that girl like, I can't eat. I can't eat. Afford to eat Subway 3 times a day. It's like, girl, you're missing the point. These stupid children.
But you know, people, you like to use the word cringy, but I thought this was a cringy moment.
Yes.
Like, uh, oh, I was bothered. So at one point,
I wonder if it's the same part I wrote down.
oh well, let's see. It's when Morgan is ordering the yogurt,
Yes.
and he finds a hair in his yogurt,
And he calls this a
and he
nappy
calls it
hair?
a big nappy hair. And I
Yeah.
was like, ooh, if I didn't already like you,
That's my prominent note about this. Like, whoa.
I don't like, certain people can use the word nappy, but I don't like when other
Uh,
people use that word, and it's like, that hair looked like a pubic hair. It was not like, to call it nappy. I don't know.
that
That word bothers me by being used by most people.
Yes, but if you think about it, and his trajectory as a documentarian and a public persona, he is that type of that straight white man who believes, like his whole Me Too thing. His atonement is just like,
He
yeah,
seems like he thinks he's in tune with.
it's gonna be fine. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna say this, and there will be no consequences because this is the method I chose to do it. It's like, no, girl.
So
Yeah.
Dan Gorski is in the documentary. He's the guy who has famously, I don't know if he's still alive. He might be. I didn't look him up. I should. But Dan Gorski is the guy who like had only been eating Big Macs for decades.
Yeah, and he, besides his whatever he's doing to his face and his hair, he didn't look morbidly obese.
He's still alive. Yeah, but he's known for like, I mean, and Big Macs make up like 90 some percent of his solid food intake. But yeah, I mean, if you don't look at his face and hair, I mean, he looks like a normal person. I mean, he's definitely not fit, but
No, but he's not morbidly obese.
then it's like, why include him except that he's like someone who's notable in the McDonald's oeuvre? But it's like, why include him if you're not going to explain, like, you can, because he even says like, well, I don't usually, like, I never order fries, and like, I don't like, and this is basically all I eat. So then it's like, why didn't they break down how many calories are in a Big Mac? And then if he's eating 3 a day, and that's pretty much all he's eating, that his caloric intake, now of course, like his fats and all that, like, what's his cholesterol look like? And I think they might even mention that his cholesterol is fine, but, and that he doesn't have diabetes. But for a documentary that has multiple health, wellness, and nutrition experts, it does a very, very poor job examining the science behind any of this, which is really irresponsible and frustrating and lame to me. But that school interview, when, like, I just can't believe they let him with that awful facial hair walk into the school and talk to these kids, and then they have the director of food services for this one school. And I thought the most interesting part is when he's like, so I'm watching these kids and all they're ordering are like chips, cookies, soda for lunch.
Little Debbie snack cakes, yeah.
And then the director of food and Little Debbie snack cakes, and she's like, well, how do we know that they're not sharing them? How do we know that they didn't bring something more nutritious from home and this is just a snack? And he's like, well, you can know by turning around because we can see that she doesn't have anything else. And then he goes and interviews the girl, and she's like, oh yeah, like, this is my lunch. The only thing I brought was an extra Coke. I thought that since he's so bold and he wants to be somebody, he could have been like the Piers Morgan of food, where he like really takes people to task for like not being more responsible with food. Like, that could have been like, if I were giving him advice about how to take this and make this like a career with some impact, and he wants to be sensational, that's how you do it.
Well, right. But
be outspoken, get in people's faces, make people uncomfortable about how we don't care about these kids' nutrition, how he does include the one at-risk school, and how the person who runs the school was very articulate in explaining that, giving these kids better nutrition helps them concentrate,
Like
and
there's a direct correlation with
a
their
direct
behavior.
correlation.
Yeah. But that lady was driving me crazy because it's like, oh, we assume that we educate them to make the right choices. Kids,
Girl,
teenagers,
who's
with
educating
their
them?
fully
Where?
their unformed brains awash in hormones, they are not making good decisions.
Ain't no
They are having
nutrition class.
unprotected sex. They are raggedy little assholes to one another, doing God knows what when your back is turned. If they can think about it, the children are doing it. Yes, the children,
I
and
mean,
and they're eating sugar. They're
you
not going to
take
eat good
life
food.
science, you take life science in school, and it's like they focus on, like, cellular reproduction, and then usually it's during that segment where you get like sex ed, but it's like they should really, I mean, that children should be taught, like,
Children should be taught, but that doesn't mean that they're going to listen either.
no, but I think that there is a way to present information that people, I mean, how many of us went to a slaughterhouse when we were younger? I mean, I don't know if that's a common thing. I did, because where I lived in high school and junior high, there were slaughterhouses nearby, and it's like that really affected how I looked at, like, I mean, that's why I think to this day I don't like mechanically separated,
Yeah, meat consumption.
like meat products. So
But
it's like,
I grew up. My dad was an avid deer hunter, and I used to have to help him dress the corpses and skin them and disembowel them. And there's a different interpretation of what that kind of preparation, that's considered an honorable preparation of the meat. And then where I'm from, they would save the horns. You would deposit the fur somewhere. Like there was. It was more in tune of recycling parts of the body more than something at a slaughterhouse, which
well,
is
even like when I worked at McDonald's, I used to love chicken McNuggets. And then when I realized how chicken McNuggets are made, I stopped eating them, because it's just like, well, this is kind of gross, because it's basically like a chicken hot dog with
oh yeah, for
like
sure.
whey protein thrown in. So it's not like it's not edible, but it's just like, this is not,
It's trash.
so then it's like, well, but again, I didn't, as someone who grew up eating a lot, like a mother who cooked all the time, and then like working at a fast food restaurant, I still didn't understand nutrition. And I was a smart kid. Like,
But you can be presented that, but that doesn't translate to what you are putting in your body and how you're feeling. Because I think a lot of us normalized feeling kind of like shit, because not realizing it, because that's just how you feel until you've given yourself the opportunity to kind of eat clean and do something like a keto or a Whole30. And then that's when you finally realize, like, oh, I think this is how my body is supposed to feel.
well, but if we're talking about children, they're subjected to whatever their parents give them, right? And
Correct.
then children can be picky. And I'm not a parent, but I can imagine sometimes it's like, I'm not interested in fighting with you right now, so just eat the fries and the chicken tenders, like,
Yeah.
whatever. Or I'm not going to try to argue with you about eating greens,
Mhm.
like that. Totally, like, I could see myself being like, fuck it, if you want to eat ice cream for dinner, go on ahead. Like, I'm not going to argue with you today, I worked all day. But I'm saying that I think there is a way to influence children to make better choices. Like, I fully, when I was in, so the reason I have some stretch marks on my ass is because I had gotten big while I was working at McDonald's, because all I would do is eat the food. Like, I had gained like 40 pounds. And then my senior year of high school, I decided I wanted to lose weight. And the only thing I understood about losing weight was, oh, well, you don't eat.
Yeah.
So I just stopped eating, and I lost a bunch of weight. Like, I literally lost like all the 40 pounds like in a couple months. So that's where those stretch marks came from.
Mhm.
But I only understood, like, oh, I just can't eat. So I wouldn't eat all day, so I wouldn't have breakfast. And then at lunch at high school, every day for all of my senior year, except for the days I would leave campus to go to Taco Bell, I would get a Dr. Pepper and a big soft cookie. They would make these like homemade cookies at the school
Mhm.
that were big, like the size of like a small plate.
Mhm.
That's all I would eat. And that all that sugar would get me going.
Mhm.
And then I
And then your
would,
body's in starvation mode, really.
yeah. And so
Mhm.
then and then at that time I wasn't living, this is a long story, but I wasn't living with my parents in my senior year of high school. But it's not a tragic story. It was like a good decision, like for everyone, not because I wasn't safe, but it was for an opportunity. But anyway, I would come home and I just wouldn't eat.
Mhm.
And I lost all that weight. And it's like, I just didn't know. Like, if someone would have explained to me, like, you don't have to feel like shit, you can eat multiple meals a day, feel satiated, lose weight.
Yeah, people don't understand that you can have a physically fit body eating,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and eating a lot of things that you kind of like.
And
Yeah.
even to this day, like I still have food issues and I still struggle with my weight. And people often don't believe that, but it's like, well, but yeah, people's relationship to food's very personal. But I, I was just really disappointed that this documentary kind of just makes it more of like a,
It's sensational.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But that's funny. I when I started working at Walmart when I was 16 and I started working for full time, I got stretch marks on my, because I got love handles because I was eating their deli food every day, all day. And then that spurred a similar situation where I was like, okay, I can't eat, and or I have to eat things with no calories. So like mustard, a jar of dill pickles, Olestra chips, you know.
yeah, yeah, because it's all well, and then I could go on and on about marketing. Like it just, even like these weight loss drugs now that everyone's talking about, like it's a joke, and like it's like, oh, I'm gonna get on Ozempic, and it's like, these are intended for people with real issues, real
Yes.
medical issues. There are side effects,
Yeah, now you're seeing lawsuits about people who's have experienced side effects from taking it. It's like,
but
well,
it's also like we're not, people aren't,
I don't know. It like with
it's
any,
really easy to be like, well, I understand that that's not good for you, and like, even though they're okay, but then it's like, well, you don't understand skincare, like, we all are
yes, deficient in some way.
deficient in some way. So it's like, have a little empathy, a little kindness and care and patience with people who are making decisions that you wouldn't make, because guess what? You do shit that doesn't make sense to other people.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we all have a responsibility to try to make sure that everyone is living like the happiest, healthiest life possible. And it's outrageous to me that a lot of shit out there, shitting on McDonald's, but it's like, you can also go to the grocery store and buy all the ingredients to have an even worse meal, or you can go buy alcohol that
Hmm.
ruins people's lives and causes people to drive drunk and kill people. Like, I mean,
There are fat people that make all their own food. Yeah.
you can buy cigarettes, you can go lay out in the sun all day and without any sunscreen. You can do a lot of shit that's harmful to you.
Hmm.
So all we can do is educate people to make choices that are better for them. And I don't think this documentary is really a good educational tool in that regard. My last note is, at one point he says he's getting tired of the food, and it's like, okay, why not give me a choice other than French fries or French fries? Hello, stupid, because you're only eating at McDonald's that specializes in burgers and fries. Like,
Right.
no one is supposed to eat at that same restaurant every meal every day.
Hmm.
It just is so like,
And you don't have to eat the fries every day.
you know
You.
what would have made me feel better about this? Same approach, same obnoxious approach, but he should have done like 5 different restaurants.
Hmm.
I'm only going to eat at McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, Taco Bell, and KFC.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
That would have been more realistic to what a lot of people do.
that's
That's how
true.
I survived in college. Before
Mhm.
I had money, I really relied on those extra value meals, those dollar
Well,
meals.
now those things are not so cheap, you
And
know?
yes, I was young, but I was also like the thinnest I've ever been back in those days. So it's like, I only ate fast food from the age of like 18, well, actually like 17 when I started college, until I started working in the casino. So there's like a 4-year period where I only ate fast food.
Hmm.
And I was like the thinnest I've ever been. It's also 25 years ago, but
Thin doesn't also mean fit, you know?
no, it doesn't. But it's like, youth obviously helped me feel more energetic, and like I could lose weight faster. And I was exercising back then too,
Hmm.
even though I wasn't as efficient as I am now. That's the other thing. Like, I didn't know how to work out back then. A pivotal moment for me in my fitness journey was when I was 22. The gym I would go to, I remember I didn't know what I was doing. I would just mimic what other people were doing,
Yeah,
because
that's
there was
what.
no internet. Like, there
Mhm.
was no like get on my phone and watch. So I remember being at this big fancy gym I used to go to, and I was just mimicking what other people were doing. And this lady walks up to me and she goes, "You're going to be sway back." And I'm like, "What?" Like, I don't know what she said.
Mhm.
Sway back. What? And then she points at this guy. So you're going to look like that if you keep lifting weights like this. And then I thought, oh my God, like, I don't want to look like him. And then I see people like that at the gym all the time.
Yeah.
They only do their upper body. They have really bad form, so their posture is horrible. And so they like, and then it doesn't help that you don't work on your lower half. So you have no ass, no legs, you're sway back. You just look crazy with these big ass arms. So I remember that being a pivotal moment when it's like, okay, I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing because I don't want to look like that. And I remember asking if I can get a trainer. And so I did go to a trainer for a little bit, but then I'm like, I'm not paying for this shit. But I did learn that, look, I'm not doing this correctly.
Yeah.
And then years went by where I think I just didn't really like, I started to learn more, but it's not until, I really don't think I kind of better understood like better way, like more efficient ways to work out until maybe like 7 or 8 years ago. Shout out, they should sponsor us.
Daily
Daily Burn.
Burn.
Daily Burn's a platform. I pay $14 a month for the last 7 years. And every day there's a new workout. And it's 30 minutes. And it includes a warm up and a cool down.
And they explain it too. It's not like, because since then I do a lot of HIIT training videos, but the instructor on YouTube, but the instructors aren't talking to you. So sometimes you don't know if you're exactly doing the right
you
thing.
do the one that I do. And the problem with that one is, I mean, I like it because I've learned what he's doing, so I don't need to hear what he's saying. But the problem is that, first of all, they don't do warm-ups.
Yeah.
And I know you don't do the cool downs. And that's not good. You need to warm up and cool down. And you need someone explaining proper form. But it wasn't until I started doing Daily Burn that I realized, like, oh, first of all, I can get a way better workout in 30 minutes on the balcony of my home than people who spend 3 hours commuting to the gym, standing around, socializing, parking, trying to be cute, taking photos. And it's like, actually, someone at the gym, who I don't know if they were just trying to like flirt with me, but they were like, oh, I see you all the time. And you because I only do cardio at the gym. Like I only do 40 minutes of cardio at the gym. And he was like, how do you have like that body, is what he said, and you only do cardio? And it's like, well, because I work out at home. I just come here as like a change of pace. But it's like, yeah, I can get way better results having a focused exercise for 30 minutes than people spending 3 hours trying to go to the gym. So I think it's just about education. Like you already mentioned, we started doing Whole30 years ago, and it's insane how different I feel when I eliminate certain foods from my diet.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know, I would recommend looking up Whole30. It's not intended to be a diet. It's intended to remove foods that cause inflammation.
Yeah. So I think you can follow Whole30, and I think not like you can eat legumes. I mean, my God, but yeah.
So the Whole30 is supposed to be like you eliminate these foods that cause inflammation, and then for 30 days, a side effect of it is that you do lose weight because you're eliminating sugar, starch, all that. But the idea of it is that then there's the thing no one ever does after Whole30 is you're supposed to reintroduce foods in categories.
Yes.
So that you can identify what you're sensitive to.
Yes.
But every time we've done it, it's like, yeah, on average, I lose 17 pounds in 30 days and I feel great. And I realize, first of all, like how much sugar I'm consuming. Sweet potatoes like fruit tastes like straight up candy when you eliminate sugar from your diet. It's crazy, right? Like sweet potatoes after 30 days of no sugar, when you eat sweet potatoes, it's like, whoa, these really are really sweet. Or like watermelon.
Watermelon. I still remember the taste of this black plum that was just nothing tastes that good.
But this devolved. I'm done talking about Supersize Me. What would you give the documentary?
2.
I would give it 1.5 out of 5. I think just like the food he's consuming has no nutritional value. It's like, I mean, the only value this film has is sort of like, it was a moment. And so I would recommend watching it if you haven't, just so you know what it is. And it also reminds me of like, especially all these Netflix documentaries that all feel gimmicky. And
yes,
it's almost like Supersize Me is like the predecessor to all of this fluff that we see now. Like, just there's
Well,
no investigative
look,
integrity to
yep.
it. There's no science to all these documentaries. It's just like someone has an opinion, and they spend a few days researching it, and now they have a 90-minute documentary streaming on Netflix.
Yes, and then if you look at like Roger Ebert gave it 2 thumbs up. Peter Travers from the Rolling Stone has glowing McDonald's inspired quip on the poster, and this feels very Sundance to me, which is where it premiered. And also, I think that I refused watching it because this came out while I was in undergrad, and I remember it being at either the Uptown or Lagoon Theater in Minneapolis, and I hated how the poster looked so much. I had no interest in watching it.
Well, I need to end this, but I want to say we're going to catch up on all our Patreon requests. There are still people
Oh
who need to
God.
provide us with their requests. So please don't be shy. Please message us on Patreon to say, you better watch this movie I paid for. So I rely on that. So don't feel like you can't tell us which movie you want us to review that you paid for.
Mhm.
But that's all I have. Ta ta for now.